Good morning, everybody. Trust you're doing well. In from beautiful Freeport, Grand Bahama, back here in the nation's capital. I'm almost thinking I'm doing Morning Grace. I was about to send a shout out to Dr. Sharice. Good morning, Dr. Sharice. I know you are probably right in the middle of celebrating there at the Revolution Church. Shout out to Pastor Monker and the entire Revolution Church team. And of course, wherever persons are celebrating here in the Bahamas. I had an opportunity to watch a little of the Mount Tabor, and I saw my brother on the pulpit, Prophet Phillips. I'm about to say, hey, bro, you sneaked into Nassau, but hey, shout out to him, and of course to Bishop Dalton Ellis, and to the fine folks of the Mount Tabor Church and people everywhere. It's Emancipation Sunday here in beautiful Bahamas. Paradise, Dr. Miles would say, the place where God lives. And if there is a place in the Bahamas where God truly abides and his throne is established, one may say there is a place in the Exumas called Black Point. And so shout out to all of the folks down there who are celebrating this Emancipation Day, this Emancipation holiday. I came in from Freeport late Friday, and so I just need at least a day off to recoup, so I didn't want to just go and rush down to the Exumas, but I am watching some of their clippings, some of their sailing events, some of their beauty pageants, their motorcade, and lots is going on. Young persons sailing, lots of activities are happening there in Black Point and also through in Cat Island, and many other places around the Bahamas. Rolleville, of course. Had a conversation on Thursday past with my brother DJ Godson, who was in Rolleville, and this evening he's going to be in Black Point Exuma. And if it's DJ, the praise is going to be crazy crazy praise is what he's gonna say. But hey, it's a great day, and while all of this is going on, I thought I wanted to still take a few moments, yes, on a Sunday morning. From time to time I pop up to extend gratitude to persons who would have engaged the Morning Grace family. That's the Inspiration 107.9 FM network, and that's on Monday to Friday. That's also on channel 989 on your cable TV, and of course we do it right here live on Facebook as well. And so we had the distinct privilege to speak with the president of the Christian Council in Grand Bahama. Last time we were in Grand Bahama, we were not able to speak with him due to some challenges he was facing at the time, but we were delighted to have the conversation with my brother, Pastor Kenneth Lewis. And that didn't only extend to the Morning Grace show. We also had some time breaking bread at Zorba's restaurant. I told my cousin Darrell, don't ever come and bring me to Freeport and talk about taking me someplace else for a stew fish other than Zorba's. And so we had a great time breaking bread, fellowshipping. Just here in a moment, of course, the president of the Christian Council also had Bishop Kemp there as well. Heard the name on many occasions, had the opportunity to meet him for the first time. And then I was also riding around a couple times with my brother, Troy Garvey. Shout out to Troy, a man with a great heart. Most people know him from his strong advocacy, his voice for others, and so Troy continued to do well. I know that the people very much are still on your heart, still on your mind, and whatever you do, whatever path God would have you in this moment, in this dispensation, you truly is doing that with the view that the people of the Bahamas will truly, truly be blessed, truly, truly be liberated, particularly as we celebrate on what we refer to as this Emancipation Sunday. And then we also, sorry about that, we also spoke with my brother, president of the Chamber of Commerce, Dylan Knowles, a great mind, of course, and of course in a very, very strategic position, commerce. And as we both shared that we believe Grand Bahama is emerging to become, having undergone tremendous challenges over the past, probably one may say 15, 20 years. I did get a chance to go to the Gumbe Festival there. Saw a person out of Nassau. They didn't give me permission to call their name, so I wouldn't. But if he listened to the chat, he will know who I'm talking to. My brother as well. So it was good to see him. But, I told the president of the Chamber of Commerce I was not prepared for what I experienced during the Gumbe Festival. Not that it wasn't best. It was good to see the people in celebration spirit. Good to see the hundreds, perhaps some may say thousands, that would have gathered. But my experience with Grand Bahama has always been quiet, so I didn't take into account mentally that it meant scores of traffic, red light backup, and anyone who knows me know that I'm not too good a traffic guy. I normally say that people don't make no appointment before 11 a.m. so that all of that road stress can be eliminated. But also the people were there, a sense of hope, a sense of inspiration, and there are many persons who contributed to the cultural expression. And of course, kudos went out to the Ministry of Tourism in the person of the Deputy Prime Minister, whose birthday, by the way, was just celebrated, I believe, a week or two ago. And so shout out to them. I believe he's either in Exuma or Cat Island. I'm sure he would touch down in Black Point, one of his constituencies where a number of things are happening. So celebration is all over the place in that regard. Apostle Kalafo Colley, had a chance to conversate with him as well down in the Grand Bahama area. But I believe if there was icing on the cake, it would have been the conversation that Morning Grace had with Bishop Godfrey Williams and, of course, his son, LaQuest. Shout out to you guys. I mean, it was such a pleasure. The honor is mine to be in their space, to have a conversation with him, to hear his sojourn, his story, his call to service, his call to humility, and his sense of love and care for the people. And so really that reignited in me more in terms of what this is about. Those of us who are called to serve, those of us who find ourselves in leadership or in some position of influence, ought to always be reminded of what it really, really is about. It's about the people. It's about liberation. It's about setting them free. And truly, Bishop Godfrey Williams is the embodiment of that in terms of relieving burdens, in terms of helping the least of them, in terms of ensuring that the dignity of human and mankind was not lost in the process. Permit me, however, if I were to share with you for the moment on this Emancipation Sunday, I just want you to take away from these conversations a few thoughts. And yes, Apostle Joe Cox is going to be going on vacation, so shout out to him. And I mention his name because whenever I say to him, ask him, how do you do your show every Saturday? religiously for 40 minutes and 50 minutes, and he would laugh at me and he'd say, Glen, I'm not checking for you. As soon as you get on this platform, you think you're not going to be able to talk solo for 20 minutes, but before you know it, 30 and 40 minutes come. So, Joe, I do publicly apologize to you, and of course, you and your entire family, please enjoy your vacation in that regard. And then I'm always grateful for the persons in Grand Bahama who show kindness, who show love, who show affection, for having us down in Grand Bahama. And of course, like I said, on Friday, it was the sealing of the breaking of bread with my pastoral colleagues. I did make a statement yesterday on my Facebook chat, and the statement went to the fact that we celebrate holidays, and I think anyone who knows me knows that I always seek to try to look at the glass half full. I want to be a voice of optimism. I want to be a voice of hope. And hope is a very, very important element of how we navigate the dark of the night. And that's one of the things that I honor the people of Grand Bahama for, was because something was stronger than what their experiences were to cause them to stay within their space. In some instances, some of them did not even go looking at other places for corn. They stayed, they dug well, they dug in. And I believe, as I mentioned to the pastors, had it not been for persons who spoke and preached hope, then imagine how great the darkness would have been. So hope and grace and optimism is what we are called to do. Even if we sometimes have to use words that sometimes seems that is truthful. Elijah said that there would be no rain for 3 years, and that was truth. But even in that prophetic declaration, God had a way to move him from the river place to the widow. So there's always sustainability in God, even if he's the one who authorized the shutdown, even if he's the one who authorized the window to close. It is not meant for our demise. It is not meant for our destruction. It is meant because the all-knowing God has a greater purpose in his will. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so I wrote yesterday that our celebration of these times, and yes, we ought to celebrate, yet we ought to be jovial, yet we ought to look at these significant markers within the context of our nation building and want to measure from whence we have come. But I also believe that it is an appropriate time to also measure how far yet we have to go. And so while we talk about emancipation, and yes, it is centuries of years ago, yet when we ask the question, or when we hear the noise as echoed, even within the context of our religious experience, one can truly say, I don't feel liberated. I don't feel emancipated. And that is true, and that can also be contradictory. But I believe it is the famous Bob Marley that used these words. He says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. The Apostle Paul would probably say it in another way, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, daily presenting yourself. And so we know this idea of emancipation, this idea of freedom. Hey, my brother Sean, trust you're doing well. I'm not sure you're still here or you're back in Texas. So this idea of emancipation, this idea of freedom, is an ongoing process, and sometimes may not be realized in terms of generational benefit, always seeking to advance generationally because of the stigma, the stench of what slavery really, really meant. And so when I speak in these spaces, and as most of you are aware, in terms of Morning Grace, Morning Grace, I believe, seeks to engage, not particularly limited to a religious or a political platform, because I do believe that both our religious systems and our political system has ways to go in terms of really defining the essence of what true freedom look like. As a matter of fact, when we look at our own political systems, and I'm talking within the context of emancipation and freedom, one really can question the extent to which, even here in our own country, notwithstanding our 52nd anniversary, one can really question, have we really achieved the idea of freedom? Yes, we would have had internal self-governance. Yes, we would have undergone independence. Yes, we would have survived 50 years. And for us, many of us believe that Jubilee moment was meant to be a significant time in which the nation resets itself, in which the nation relooks at its own mileage from whence we'd have come, and would have really used the Jubilee moment as a down payment on the next phase, the next chapter, the next steps necessary so that we can truly experience or truly catch up with the idea of emancipation, with the idea of independence, with the idea of liberation. And some may rightfully say, well, Pastor Glen, Ambassador Glen, we can't truly be free if the book by which we are governed still have embedded in it that we are ruled by Her Majesties, the heir and successors. One truly can question the idea of how it is that we can truly claim freedom when the very governing document that we have as a people says that we are the subjects of. One can truly question the degree to which we claim freedom or emancipation if we are not beneficiaries of the land, beneficiaries of the resources. One can truly question the degree to which we claim freedom if the land that we own, we are not possessors of it, we are not owners of it. And so all of these questions have a rightful place in it. And yet, as we enter into this season, I call it the political season, it seems as if, as a people, that we are all but ready to be overcome by it, be overwhelmed by it. In many cases, some may say, well, I can't wait until it's over so that the nation can go on. Yesterday, I had a privilege, as relaxing, having traveled to watch a movie on Netflix, and it was dealing with the church in Boston, the Catholicism, the Catholic Church, and the Globe. The Boston Globe was at the heart of it, and it was taught that the name of the movie is called Spotlight, and they were looking into all of the complaints that they were hearing. And as a story built, they began to realize that complaints are coming from this parish and that parish relative to the abuse that was going on within the Catholic Church. And we all know this story. We saw it played out right before our eyes. And there was a question over whether they should pursue the individuals who were perpetrators of those heinous crimes and the many assaults on particularly young boys and young children and families. But the Boston Globe, the story went on to say that what was happening was so systemic, was so infiltrated throughout the entire religious body, that they decided the best way to pursue this was to look at the challenges or look at what was going on in a systemic way. In other words, they were saying there must be something that is driving this narrative that is bigger than any one individual, that allows for the stench, allows for the corruption, allows for what is going on. And yes, they found cover up, and yes, they found that lawyers and all of those things bought into those ideas, and some things were settled privately. But it was never brought in the sunlight. It was never brought to exposure. It was never, and a thing that is not brought to exposure cannot find its proper healing, cannot find its sense of revitalization, its sense of surviving. And so we know the story. They exposed, it went into the public space. But I believe a part of it was to unearth a system that lend itself to corruption, that lend itself for abuse. And part of the concern, as they said, was, well, you really can't touch this because the then church was significant in the community. It had done a whole lot of things, and therefore to expose this would do so much damage and do so much harm. And yes, I understand that. But even as we think about emancipation, that this idea of slavery, this idea of dehumanizing, this idea of a people were greater than some other people is so unlike the character of God. It's so unlike the vision of God. It's so unlike what God has instituted, this whole idea of mankind and humankind. Let us make man in our own image. It's so anti-God. And yet to have institutions, and yet to have governments, and yet to have systems that belittle, systems that dehumanize, system that does not see all mankind as equal. And yet within the context of nations and within the context of freedom. And yes, we are the beneficiary of a document over 100 years that says emancipation for all. Yet hundreds of years later, Bob Marley was wrestling with the idea that a people that is free, without mental capacity to be free, without a system of freedom, without policies that drives into freedom, then we are still locked and in prison and in pursuit of something where what is laid on a document is not our reality and is not our experiences. What a tragedy. I think it is Barack Obama who said that deep in the soul of every man, deep in the soul of every man is this desire to be free. This desire to not be bound. This desire to not be subject to no man. And those have been some of the greatest fight. And yes, we say we are free, and we are. And again, I said I'm a person who sees the glass half full. I believe there's much more land to be possessed. I believe the first steps that were made are critical steps toward that. But I believe these moments remind us that freedom is not just a one-time incident. I believe we are sucked into the idea of festivals and sucked into the idea of other things to drown out the reality of the noise, to drown out the reality of what is happening around us. I believe it's the book of Proverbs that says, yes, drink. And when we drink, it quiet down the noise, only to discover the day after or the 2 days after, not only are we affected by the hangover, but we realize that the challenges remains the same. And that's part of the challenge. That's part of why we wrestle with this. And so I believe as we navigate this space and as we think about what this means, and I'm not saying that that our experiences should not inform us. Our experiences should not do things that should, the same people that God chose to be his chosen people were the same ones that he said, you're going to know who you are. And you're going to know who you are because you will be sent to a land and you would be enslaved for 430 years. But I'm going to deliver you. I am going to set you free. And when I set you free, the demarcation of that freedom is that you will come out with great wealth. You will come out with great favor. You will come out with great resources. It is the book of Psalms that puts it this way. I cause men to triumph over you and to afflict you, but I will bring you into a wealthy place. It was the attitude of the children of Israel as they wrestled with their condition and they wrestled with where they were. And the Bible puts it in the book of Exodus and said it, and the more they afflicted them, the more they grew. Know ye not that the trying of your faith worketh patience, and patience hope, and hope that maketh not ashamed. The book of Acts put it, through much tribulation we enter the kingdom of God. And so I'm not advocating that to be a believer does not mean that we're not going to have challenges. I'm not advocating that means that we are not going to be persecuted. As a matter of fact, the demarcation of those who are called to be righteous, and blessed are you when men shall persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. So freedom is not the absence of challenge, but yet freedom is this sense of knowing who you are as a son, as a child of God, for whom the Son set free is free indeed. What is the state of our mental capacity? What is the state of our mindset? Every now and again I get a chance to visit some of my brothers at the prison, and yes, they would have done things that society rejects, and that's not to remove that from them. But I'll tell you the truth, sometimes having conversations with them behind the prison cells, and some of them are sentenced to life. And there's a certain level of conversation that is had with them that, I'll put it this way to you, and yes, they want to be free. I don't think any of them want to be behind the bar. But it seems as if they have been able, Kelsey, to get their mind in such a place that the limitations of the iron bar was not the extent of their vision, of their purpose, of their destiny. And yes, they accepted the consequences for their action, but they understand that the extent of which freedom truly comes is one in mind, one in spirit, that the dark of the night was not sufficient to out the brightness of the light on the inside of them. The power of the gospel, the power of what Jesus came to bring and to deliver, the mindset that truth was forever established and settled in the heavens. And so, yes, they would have moved our names. Yes, they would have placed handcuffs on us. Yes, they would have chained us. Yes, they would have saddled us in the bottom of ships. And yes, this day soon came when the Pompeys and others fought back. But there was something about those people that caused them to sing songs in the middle of the night, that though they were whipped with stripes, they were free in their minds. The power of freedom, for as a man thinketh, so is he. And so the question for us is not how do we go about celebrating emancipation. Yes, we have not caught up with what that truly means, but could it be that the extent of our growth, the extent of our transformation is due to the limitations of our thinking, the limitations of our mind, the limitation that somebody is better than us, the limitation that greatness is defined in some other way, some other fashion. Greatness is defined by the office that we serve. And so we're in pursuit of all of these things in the name of greatness, and yet we are yet to align ourselves to He who was the Father of truth, for whom the Son set free is free indeed. He did not come in the voice as a prophet. He was born a king. It is the book of Hebrews that put it this way. It says, in those days, prophets spoke to the fathers, but in this day, in this dispensation, we had the very one, the express image of the Father, the Son, came, and He spoke to us, and the truth He brought to us was meant to be the truth that was intended to liberate us. And that truth was meant to settle our hearts and settle our minds. The truth that He said, who we are. And we see the body of His work. We know that He did not come adorned in religious garment. He did not come adorned in a political system. As a matter of fact, both the political system and the religious system found Him at odds because He was so revolutionary in His thinking. He would walk into the temple building and He would realize that the place that was meant to be a place of prayer became a place that was considered a den of thieves, a place that blocked the least of them out. And so He went in such holy indignation. He said the very things that they had established, the very things that they set up was a blockage to the people. There was a separation that the kingdom of God could not tolerate. When truth comes, there is no distinction. When truth comes, He lifts up the downtrodden. When truth comes, He heals the broken heart. When truth comes, He set at liberty those that are in captivity. That's why for me personally, and I shouldn't say personally, but the idea of Jubilee, even in our own country, the idea of Jubilee, is offended by some of the things that we are yet walking out and living out in our own country. Freedom not truly experienced to the degree to which, and yes, there is progress, but we have much more land to possess. So freedom must continuously be our pursuit. Truth must continuously be our pursuit. Because it is the truth that sets us free. The truth of who we are. The truth of our own nation. The truth of righteous government. The truth of what really defines greatness. I was thinking about two of the disciples' early days. They were accustomed to a system of government that was determined. Greatness was determined by who sits on the left and who sits on the right, and we still determine greatness in that fashion. We still see politics as the true definition of greatness. Not that one should not aspire for public service and national service. Noble are you. But it should not be from a mindset that the power is based on where you sit. When the one who brought truth came, He said, truth is not defined by who sits on the left and who sits on the right. He said, as a matter of fact, that's not even mine to give. My kingdom does not even operate in that form or fashion. My kingdom defines greatness in another way. My kingdom defines greatness by those who serve. My kingdom defines greatness by those who humble themselves. My kingdom defines greatness by those who disrobe themselves to wash another man's feet. My kingdom defines greatness. And so when my message came to be a liberator of the least. Our political systems, our religious systems, And that was the essence of the movie. The essence of the movie yesterday, in terms of the spotlight, yes, it was dealing with the abuse, but the essence of the movie was that this is a systemic challenge. So our religious systems are preaching, for the most part, still lifts up and still looks down, to the point where our churches are being emptied, to the point where people have very little confidence in the political system because they said, this doesn't help me. And so if you look at it in a personal way, the essence of the movie was, if you go after the few priests, then the corruption in the system will remain because they would easily be dealt with. But if we go after the system, then we could bring about holistic change. And so some of us in our minds say, well, if I change the PLP for the FNM, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have your preference, yes, have your preference, but don't be deceived into thinking that if they use the same system that you will get different results. Don't be deceived into thinking if the same playbook is used, that perhaps you would experience this noble idea, this noble quest to be free. Whom the Son set free is free indeed. And so he became an offense both to the religious and the political system. As a matter of fact, not that he said Caesar have no place to exist. He said, well, what you see to Caesar, give to Caesar, pay the tribute. But know that the order in which I bring is of a different order. Chosen 12, the ordinaries, the lifting up and the raising of the least of them. Morning, the least of them. So that this idea and this ideal of what it means for emancipation, what it means to truly be free. And so do all of the celebration, do all of the things that makes us happy. And holidays come and go. But my prayer is that we use this moment to think deeply and to think soberly of what it is that is at the core of all human, deep in the soul of every man, every human being, is desire to be free. And so when the kingdom of God came, and when the announcement of this king was born, and when Herod heard that another king was born in his backyard, Herod knew that the end of his rule, the end of his dominion, the end of his oppression on human and the dignity of others was coming to an end. And another king would introduce his order. Another king would introduce his system. Yes, he would come 42 generations later from Abraham, but in every generation it became closer and closer. Then finally, the promise that was given, come Imani, finally the promise that was given to David of your kingdom and of your government and of your peace and of your throne, there shall be no end. For 42 generations, a Jewish boy was born in a manger, because when he knocked to the door of the inn, when he knocked, as Mary was impregnated, global shifting was happening. Caesar had sent out a decree. There were so many things, and I'm saying this so that you'll also think that in the context of our now day, in the context of our moment, that while all of these things was happening, at the same time, a Virgin Mary was being approached by an angel to say, hey, the day would come when the architect of emancipation would come, and he would knock to the door and they would find no room to him. He would have to be born on the outside, and his voice would be different. His voice would not be of the religious order. His voice would not be of the political system. Because both had their stench in them. As a matter of fact, Jesus warned his disciples. He said, be careful of the leaven of the Pharisees. He said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Label in what they fed was intended to not bring about true emancipation, true freedom, true liberation. Deep in the soul of every man is this desire to be free. So this king was born. This king went through his own experience, went through his own wilderness temptation so that he would not succumb to the temptation of the world. He knew that by every definition, Satan was the prince of the air. He knew that Satan truly was the God of the world after all. The one to whom was given the dominion mandate had legally given it up to Satan. So there was a certain level of legal right that he understood. And so when he was tempted and he said, see, all of the kingdoms of this world I'll give to you if you bow down. If you bow down. The whole idea of systems is to bow down, to succumb, to suppress. Give them a little bread so they bow down. Give them a little crown land so they bow down. Do we not understand why the three Hebrew boys were so significant within the divine order of things? Because when they heard the sound of the music, nothing got them to bow down. They were so resolved in whom they were called to worship that they found ways to operate in that system, but yet did not succumb to the pressure, because they understood the dignity of every man was not to bow down. The price of freedom is to not bow. I didn't say don't be humble. I don't say don't be served. And yes, we have to serve ourselves in the greatness. But this Jewish boy brought the blueprint. He brought the pathway. He brought the divine script. He brought the heavenly words. And within it he said, I've come to set free those that are in captivity. I've come to be their champion. And he shared some of experience in terms of how the kingdom would operate. And at one point he talked of a man who was working for a nobleman, and this man had occurred a certain bill within his own domain. And the time zone came when the master was checking his books and was about to say, well, hey, how come you owe me this amount? And the amount that he owed was beyond his capacity and his ability to pay. And the essence of the message was that at a point when you are beyond the ability to pay, the one who came to set you free will not lay to your charge, will not add to your burden, but will forgive you as if you did not owe him. And the Bible says this same man who was forgiven of all his debt went down the road, and when he went down the road, he found somebody who owed him. And rather than extending to the person who owed him the same thing that was given to him, what did he do? He almost choked the living daylight, we would say, Kelsey, out of the person. Doesn't that sound like our presentation of the gospel? Doesn't that sound like how we operate, that we've been forgiven of much? And yet when we find ourselves challenged, so you wonder then that he was bringing in this new gospel, and he began to say, blessed are you when men shall persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. Blessed are you. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who show mercy, for they shall obtain mercy. And when men shall do all manner of evil against you, rejoice and be exceedingly glad. He began to change the paradigm and change the mindset, because freedom and emancipation, as Bob Marley say, emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And so as we celebrate, as we mark this moment, and yes, we ought to, thank God for all of those who etched in legal declaration, emancipation and freedom. But there's a book, there's a king, there's a Yeshua who came. And when he came, he said, I came to set the captives free. How did he gauge it? How did he measure it? He said, I speak nothing except I hear my Father say it. I do nothing except I see my Father do it. He became the blueprint, the expression of what freedom meant. And so he was deliberate about, in some cases, violating the law. I know some of my brothers are going to jump when they hear that. He was deliberate about picking corn on a Sabbath day, knowing quite well that it would provoke a conversation, because the religious system had gotten to a place where there was much law, but yet people were bound. He was deliberate about writing in the sand, ye that are without sin, cast the first stone, because he understood that to violate any law was a violation of all. And then he used the language that amplified even more what his kingdom would be about. He said, I came not into this world to condemn the world, but by through me the world will be saved. So this message of freedom, this message of emancipation is not isolated to a black people. It's a liberation of all mankind. For there is no other name upon the face of the earth by which mankind will be saved. So those who followed him, those who became baptized in his order, those who embrace his philosophy, his mindset, his thinking, his way of doing things, his government, to them were entrusted the mantle. And here's that mantle go. He said to them, he said, now I'm going to leave this authority with you. I'm going to give you the authority to remit sin. I'm going to give you the authority to retain sin. And I want you to know that you have so much power because of what I did on the cross when I cried it is finished. I want you to know that you have so much power that if you remit their sin, heaven will also remit their sin. If you retain their sin, heaven will also retain their sin, because I have given you not only the ministry of reconciliation to not impute their righteousness, their iniquity against them, but I have given you ambassadorial authority to operate in the earth, and greater work shall ye do. I only want you to be guided by the Spirit of truth. So this may very well be a hard saying, but I would probably say it in this way. Sin is not a problem, though it is a symbol by which all of us find ourselves bound. But may I submit to us that the extent to which we find ourselves bound is the extent to which we have not exposed or have not heard the truth. My wife is next door, and she's going to tease me. She probably wouldn't even cook if I say this, but I just tease her every August. I just tease her. I said the folks in Foxhill got the message late. And so emancipation for others, Sean, was not emancipation for them. And I'm calling her right now, and she's walking right in while I'm saying that. So no breakfast for me this morning. So what was the signal difference? What was the signature? What was the one reason that the folks in Foxhill were still bound while others were free? Not because the ruling did not go out, but because they did not hear. They did not get the announcement. And so Foxhill is going to have their own day another week. As a matter of fact, she may be packing her bag now because, this ain't the real day. They celebrate emancipation. They get the news late. But that's not only true for Foxhill, that's true for our belief system. Faith cometh by hearing, hearing by the word of God. So if we don't hear truth, then even though freedom may be plastered all over the place, if we don't hear it, if we don't hear the preacher say it, how can they hear except by a preacher? How can a preacher preach except they be sent? Sean, you're not a Fox Hill guy. You're close. So what do we hear? What gospel do we present? On whose behalf do we represent? Some months ago, I believe it was a couple months ago, I had an opportunity to speak at my former church in the Grove, thanks to my brother, Pastor Henry Rolle, and of course they were celebrating the honoring of the service to Bishop Scott. And the message was around the idea of fatherhood. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. What liberating language. Around the idea of fatherhood. Money? Let Papi finish, all right? Let Papi finish. And I like Isaac because Isaac had a blessing for Jacob, not because the book said Jacob was the one to be blessed. Isaac had a blessing for Jacob because God said the latter son would be blessed. And we know the story. We know what went in that. We know the drama. We know the actors in the play. But here is where I caught an eye on. I caught an eye on Isaac's eyes was dim that he could not see. And because he could not see, here is the exchange. The voice sounds like Jacob. The hand feels like Esau. But because Isaac was not able to see, because his eyes was dim, he passed on a blessing to Jacob, not because it was the legal thing to do. He passed on a blessing to Jacob because God said he was the one that was to be blessed. It is what God says that sets us free. And if he who came said, there is therefore now no condemnation, if he is the one who said, whom the Son set free is free indeed, if he is the one who said the truth shall set you free, then I want to submit as we close out on this Emancipation Day that freedom experience may be as a result of what we hear, because the folks in Fox Hill were not experiencing the emancipation because they did not hear. They were still exposed to the old mindset. I want to submit to us. I want to submit to us. Those of us who are called to be ministers of this gospel, those of us who are called to be ambassadors of Christ, not only have been given a mission, not only have been given a mandate and a purpose, but we too, like Isaac, have to execute what God says, not what we see with our eyes, for we walk not by sight, we walk by faith. None of us will ever do if we mind our bodies, if we mind what is going on, but that's not the walk that we're called to walk. The walk that we call is in the pattern of Abraham. We were called to walk in a sojourn, a place of faith, and we walk that not by our own GPS. We walk that by the GPS of God. What did God say concerning this nation? What did God say concerning our people? And when we ascend the pulpits or when we use these platforms, it is for us to articulate what God says. And so what God says concerning this nation is that a little one shall be great. What God says concerning this nation, I have called you out of darkness into marvelous light. What God said concerning this nation, that you'll show the world what independence under God looks like. What God says concerning this nation and what the founding fathers agreed, to which we continue. What God said concerning a new generation by way of his Son, except we be converted and become like the little ones, we shall not enter the kingdom of God. And yet, we use these sacred moments to not communicate what God says. Yet, we use these sacred moments to not pray what God said. When you pray, pray thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I made a post out of Grand Bahama as I wrap up here on this network reset. And the post I made out of Grand Bahama because as I was there, in the place I was reminded more of a voice that pioneered this nation around the world. And yes, one may say I give tribute to him often, and we should, because fatherhood is critical to reminding us of who we are. And he said there must be a place, a country, somewhere in the world where the culture and the values of the kingdom of God is expressed so that all of the world will know what the kingdom of God looks like. I believe this moment awaits us. I believe while the world seems to be going through crisis, is there a place? Is there a nation? Is there a Judah of Bethlehem? Because that's what Joseph and Mary found. Joseph and Mary found that there was a place marked by which this king would be born. This new idea, this new trust, this new voice of liberation, this divine truth. Heaven would come down. And the Bible says that that heavenly voice was dispatched to shepherds who were abiding in their field, watching over their flocks by night. In other words, even in the night season, they did not move. They did not shift because they know the time would come, though the night was dark, that there would be a divine disruption to what was happening, and a bright light would shine, and that bright light would lead them to a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. As small as it was, wise men would come from afar because they understood, they knew they would come, a day of liberation. 30 years later, that voice rose up and became offensive to both the religious and the political system, and began a course, a journey to the liberating of mankind, the setting free of the woman who carried the oil as a prostitute, the setting free of a tax collector who have stolen all of the people's money. Even Barabbas would be the beneficiary of his dying. Some years ago, I had a surgery done and I was taking a test, and there was a tumor in the optic nerve. I just wanted to share this before I wrap up. And while I was taking the test, they would put my head in a bowl like. And the lady who was administering the test, she would say to me, she would say, Glen, there's a red light, a cross light in this machine. And she would say, don't take your eyes off it. She would say there are going to be other lights around it, but don't take your eyes off that cross, that red cross, because if you take your eyes off it, the reading will come out wrongly. The reading will be inaccurate. And so many times we look at our children not through the lens of the cross. So many times we look at our circumstances not through the lens of the cross. So many times we look at our nation not through the lens of the cross. We look at them through naked eyes. And naked eyes will always read things that are carnal and temporal and subject to change. But I want our feet to be anchored on this Emancipation Day, that the one who came to set us free, the one who came to say there is no condemnation, the one who came to say whom the Son set free is free indeed, the one who came to say it is finished, the one who entrusted to us the ministry to reconcile, not imputing the trespasses, the one who said to us, I've given you authority to etched out. That's why they got mad with him. They got mad with him because he was telling people, take up your bed and walk. He was telling people, go your way and sin no more. He was telling, who is this? From whence did he come? But a blind man heard that he was passing one day. And the blind man said, Son of David. The blind man recognized that some generations later, the one who came in the legacy of David now sat on the throne of grace. That's how we pray. Come boldly to the throne of grace. That's what we say. When he came with grace and truth. That's what the word says. By grace and truth, iniquity is purged. So as we celebrate today, celebrate in the freedom that was extended to us. Celebrate without bondage. Celebrate knowing that there is therefore now no condemnation. Celebrate knowing that your trespasses are forgiven. Celebrate knowing that he was wounded for our transgression, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace rests upon him, and by his stripes we celebrate knowing that no weapon formed or fashioned against you shall prosper. Celebrate knowing that even though he may cause men to triumph over you, yet he brought you into a well place. Celebrate knowing that the trying of your faith worketh patience, and patience hope, and hope that maketh not ashamed, to bring you to a place where you are lacking nothing. Celebrate knowing that you are blessed when they persecute you. Celebrate knowing that yea, do we walk through the valley and the shadow of death, we will fear no evil, because he is with us. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. As a man thinketh, so is he. I want to encourage us today that even though we may find ourselves like Paul and Silas, experiencing the true feelings of what it is to be bound, experiencing the true feeling of what it is to be going through so much, but because Paul and Silas knew that the place where they were was not the true definition of where they were mindset-wise, at midnight they found a way to sing a song. And the Bible said the foundations of the prison were broken. I want to submit to you today that whatever keep you bound, there's a song of deliverance. That's what our ancestors did. That's why we live in a free Bahamas, because our ancestors, notwithstanding the stripes on our back, our ancestors sang a song in the middle of the night. And the God of creation honored the song in the middle of the night and sent down divine help. Divine help, so much so that while other nations fought for their freedom here in the Bahamas, one Lyndon Uscott Pinland, how? By virtue of words. I hear you, Troy. I believe there are voices again that needs to equally say, just as he did, let God's people go. The time has come. The time of liberation. Let's not waste this moment. It's Sunday, Emancipation Sunday. Others do what they do to celebrate. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to remind us of the significance of this moment, to remind us that there is much more land to be possessed. Let the possession of our mind first be within the context of our mind, and let the context of our mind be driven by what we hear and by not what we see, because it is what we hear that transforms us. Jesus told his disciple in simple form, he said, blessed are your ears, for they hear. Blessed are your eyes, for they see. I want to submit to you. Hey, my brother D'Angelo in Crooked Island, man, listen. I love flying. Let me say that. Sonara, don't rebuke me. I love flying, so please. There's no greater place I'd love to be than to be down there in Crooked Island. But as you think about it, blessed are your ears, for they hear. Blessed are your eyes, for they see. He didn't say to their mouth first, because the hearing would determine how you see, and the seeing would determine how you speak, and how you speak will determine how things are created. Because if we go by the blueprint in Genesis, darkness and chaos fill all the earth. But he did not speak darkness. Why? Because he heard, the Creator saw, he knew light existed. And so when he spoke, let there be light. And there was light. Ministers, ambassadors, those of us who are called into the sojourn of faith, children of Abraham, seed of Abraham, a call to give voice to what he says. And as we give voice to what he says and keep on speaking it, the Bible said that he spoke and it was good and it was good, and then he saw. Continue this journey, continue this process. Let's keep on marching till the road we trod leads unto our God. Sonara, thank you for joining. I don't know who else was on Zoom, but we'll talk about that a little later. Happy Emancipation Day. Whom the Son set free is free indeed. His gospel did not come to condemn us. His gospel came to liberate us, to set us free. He was troubled. He was troubled. He knew what Abraham meant. He knew what Abraham's symbol, the seed of freedom, the seed of liberation, the seed of God's chosen people. And yet when he came, he saw this daughter of Abraham walking around with her back bent over. And he said to her, if you know who you are, then you will straighten your back up. If you know who you are, that spirit that has kept you bound has got to go. And as soon as she agreed with Jesus that she was the daughter of Abraham, that sense of knowing released her from every iota, every feeling of infirmity. I want to declare that over you today. Because the Son set you free, then the present condition does not dictate to you your purpose, your call, your destiny. That even if he chooses to give you a limp in your leg, it is because the limp in your leg is your marker to greatness. And it has your destiny etched all over it. It is your scar of approval. It is God's way of saying you're acceptable in the beloved, even with your scars. Have a great day, everybody. You're blessed because he says you are blessed, chosen, and highly favored. Happy Emancipation.